Beatrice, can I come back and ask you a little bit about your own work? Jack has talked about the idea of speed. That we're making good progress on the sustainability side. Largely because we have agreed international frameworks, or at least agreed regional frameworks, perhaps, and legislation to support that. And nutrition more needs to be done. But often we look towards the kind of food heroes that you're speaking to on a daily basis, the startups and innovators, to accelerate progress towards sustainable nutrition. What what role can the companies that you're talking to daily, what role can they play in the acceleration of this journey for our industry and for the food system as a whole?
I believe they can speed up that change, right? We are living many changes. We are living in a volatile context, so we need to keep up. And the traditional workings of the industry cannot keep up on its own. So that is the reason why we are in constant search for these food change makers, these food heroes, which can be farmers, scientists, or entrepreneurs, as you mentioned. And we look at them from different perspectives. So we have detected what the main challenges are. As we said, climate resilience is one of them, nutrition, and also how do we make this better food more accessible to all. So in each of these contexts, we find entrepreneurs throughout the world that can put forward solutions to make that better food more accessible to all. So I'd like to share with all of you some specific examples.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
always remember a sentence from one of our food heroes, or one of the members from our KM0 squad, this network of experts. And he always says the speed of change is faster than our response. But we have a chance of getting to speed if we work with these innovators, with these food heroes. So the areas of work I want to highlight are, first of all, climate resilience. So in that area, the importance of soil health. One example of a company that is doing great work in making healthier soils that can also absorb more emissions is Loam Bio. So what Loam Bio has developed is a compound that is based with fungi. We believe fungi is one of those future foods, and this is inoculated into soils, and soils become healthier. So with time, of course, and with this microbial technology, this can help soils to become healthier. As we know, soils are deforested. We have lost topsoil from this monocrop culture, and we need to bring back health into soils, because this is very important for our own health as well. So on the one side, these soils have great potential in sequestering carbon, and on the other, if these healthy soils bring food, this food will be much more nutritious. So in the past 50 years, many of the foods we consume have lost 40% of their nutrients. And this is due to deforestation. This is due to this lack of health in soil. So this is a very good example of the interlinkage, the interdependence between climate and between our own health. We have other examples of startups working in the nutrition space. We know that artificial intelligence has great potential, and we are starting to figure out how artificial intelligence can be incorporated into our own industry. Maulac is a company that is figuring out how to develop a protein, a super protein, which is biosimilar to colostrum. Colostrum is a protein found in breast milk. And this type of protein, which of course cannot be commercialized, breast milk, we can find the biosimilarity with this artificial intelligence and create this same protein with only plant-based ingredients. And this could be very beneficial for our own human adult health. And one
Yeah.
last innovation I'd like to bring to the
Yeah.
table is molecular agriculture. So we know that protein is going to be one of the main challenges of our food system. We need to bring sufficient protein for the growing population. So with molecular agriculture, we can express animal protein in plants, and this is incredible. What if we could express pork protein, for example, in peas? This can be a great solution to bring this higher nutrition and more sustainable products to the market. Also thinking about those developing countries.
Beatrice, thanks for your comments. They're terrific, and they're three companies that I had not been aware of. So it's always nice to have to follow up. Um, One of the things that surprises me about comments is that you haven't given us three cool brands that you can buy in some cool supermarket or deli store in downtown Manhattan. Instead, you've told us about soil health, super proteins, and the expression of animal. It's not your comments are not about what I expected, but they seem to be more tangible. Is the solution to sustainable nutrition in the supply chain rather than at the front end of the consumer? Do you see it like that, or uh, am, am I misrepresenting you?
In most of the cases, yes, they are very unsexy solutions. So journalists
Yeah,
don't like these answers. They like flashy solutions for their headlines. But we do believe in this invisible innovation. What we need to be working towards is to having a delicious, nutritious plate in front of everyone, but not necessarily bringing strange innovations to the plate. So we are also obsessed with seeing how these supply chains can be transformed. So other examples that can maybe give a hint of what type of innovation we believe should be invested in is Patagonia Provisions, the apparel brand. They're also developing food brands that are much more sustainable. An example is Kernza beer. So Longroot Ale is the commercial name. What they have done is brew beer with a different type of grain that has very long roots, and these very long roots contribute to this soil health, as I mentioned, and they are generating a demand. So companies, brands, they have a big responsibility in generating demands for better crops, because otherwise, why would farmers have an incentive to grow other types of foods that are better for the soil, but then they won't have a demand for it? Or
yeah,
another example is Moonshot Snacks. They are regenerative snacks, and this brand is actually generating a demand for these regenerative crops. This is why we believe we need to have this supply chain approach, this systems approach.
yeah.
Of course, communicating to the consumer what we're doing, because if we only focus ourselves on invisible innovation, we're not going to be able to pay for that higher price. So we need to see how to do this,
Very
but
good,
we do need to
very
lower
good.
the green premium of these better
Yeah,
foods.
I like the idea of invisible innovation. Jack, you wanted to comment on this?
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on that, the point of communication, because I think it's really important. One of the things that you probably heard me say before is that uh, consumers love innovation almost as much as they despise change. And sadly, there's no place that people despise change more than in the food we eat, because food is what brings us together with friends and family. And if you mess with my food, you're messing with my family, and people don't like that. But if we don't change how we produce food, everything will change. And so I think it's just really critical, one, that we think about the language we use in talking about food so that we can stop polarizing the conversation and we can bring people together to solve
Mm,
problems. And the second is who brings innovation to market is actually really important. Products that may be totally acceptable when they come from some of the small innovators that we just heard about might not be as acceptable if they were brought by large multinational companies. And so, how we talk about food, who's doing the innovation, all of these things matter to whether or not consumers are going to be open to them.
It's a super point, Jack. And Geraldine Gilbert has asked this question in the Q&A here as well. Geraldine, I'd like to have a longer conversation about this at the end if we have time. So I think this point about communication is very much to the fore. Juan, could I ask you to just briefly, Beatrice has given a very compelling and very exciting case for invisible innovation, for higher prices, for working the kind of, like, I really like the phrase food heroes that she's dealing with. But in my observation, many of the companies of our industry have tried to do this and it's failed. What is the secret to success to working with these small companies to create a really beneficial relationship?
Yeah, I was fascinated by all the comments, and Damien, the question is easy, the answer is a little bit more complex. So let me try to frame.
Yeah.
I think what we heard is that food is culture, and people will not eat food if it doesn't taste well, if it's not enjoyable, and it's not something that it's culturally appropriate. It needs to be local. But food also needs to become nutrition, and we've lost a little bit of that. There is too much food that is creating non-contagious diseases that are really bad. Food is making people unhealthy. So nutrition, bad nutrition becomes non-health. So we need to really educate consumers on the fact that enjoyment and food is great, and half of the meals in Western Europe or the US are taken outside the home. Not only about cooking, it's about also what you eat outside the home.
Yeah.
But then that needs to be done in a way that creates a nutrition impact. And it's both the quality of what you eat and the quantity and the frequency, right? So in the end, diets are that, the sum of these two elements. Then nutrition is health. Over time, bad nutrition creates health problems, and health problems create a bad life. So I think that staircase for people to really understand that not eating well does create long-term problems is important. But you can't only use that as a science. As Beatrice said, that's where supply, if you want, needs to meet demand. So this all needs to be done in a way that is exciting, innovating, fun, etc. So innovation has a responsibility to create impact, but it also has a responsibility to create excitement. And Beatrice used the word caring. People will not eat the food they don't care for. And so I think that's where art needs to meet science. I think there are other industry examples that do that better than the food industry. And sometimes you could argue of the impact they have, but the cosmetic industry is incredible at creating. I care for what I don't buy products. I buy youth forever. That's what I buy. So how does food create health forever? And so I talked about, the health side for one person at a time. But then you do that for billions, you need to do that for the planet, right? Because if you can't create these innovations with impact, and you don't respect the building blocks that Beatrice or Jack talked about, which is it has to be based on an agriculture that is regenerative in nature, and the definition of that is still under discussion, but basically an agriculture that is positive to the environment. It's a system that cannot afford to live with 30 to 40% of food waste. I mean, it could be okay to create food that consumes resources if we eat it, but 30 or 40% of the food we create uses land, deforestation, water, and greenhouse gases. A scary statistic is that 10% of all emissions in the world are linked to food waste. 10% across all industries. So reducing food waste is both supply and demand. It's cultural, because 30 or 40% of the food waste happens in the fridge or at the restaurant, right? So not in the supply chain upstream. And then the last one is what we talked about, is the source of protein. Protein is life, right? and everybody wants more protein, but on the current model of animal protein, we don't have enough planets to generate that, right? So I think, in summary, one, there is a culture will always eat any strategy. If I make the pun, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So first, people, the culture and understanding the importance of good food and enjoyment of good food for the future of their own health and life and their kids is super important. Once people start caring for that, the innovation engines out there are actually available. A huge amount of startups, and Beatrice talked about 3, but the startup world in food tech has been growing very fast. There's been a bit of false starts and issues, but in some areas, like plant protein or other. But when I look at the pipeline of things happening, right, and we look at that in Kerry, the amount of innovations which are available is fantastic. So the startup is not the issue. The scale up is the issue. How do we scale that up?
Yeah.